The parable of the prodigal daughter. There was a woman who had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes and was not good looking. But Rachel had a lovely figure and was very attractive. Every week, their mother made it a point to take them both to the church. Rachel had the attention of her congregation, but Leah was not noticed by anyone. She came forward and joined her church choir, but still, no one took any interest in her. Her future seemed to be a question mark, but her mother got nothing to worry about. She planned and amassed gold for Leah from her young age. She thought Rachel might not need such a saving, for that was what was going on in their land. The pretty ones were booked even before they attained puberty. Others should give a lot of gold to get grooms for themselves. If they couldn't give, they couldn't get married. But if they had paid their dowry, even if they were ugly or atrocious to look at, grooms and their families would come forward to accept them. In their culture, the married were seen as the blessed or fortunate ones, and the unmarried were labeled as the disobedient or rebellious ones with a questionable future. The girls grew up and came of age. Since Leah was not distracted by anyone, she was able to focus on her academics. She studied, worked hard, and got an impressive career in the city. Since Rachel was disturbed and distracted by both men and women of all age groups, she couldn't concentrate on anything. She was dragged by others into a life of partying. In no time, she got hooked on various substances. They in turn shipwrecked her whole life. One fine day, she went and said to her mother, "Mother, give me the share of gold that is coming to me." Though her mother did not save anything for her, she didn't say a word. She divided the gold between her daughters. Not many days later, Rachel took her share and followed some worthless people to a life in the city. There, she squandered her wealth in reckless living and incessant shopping. And when she had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and she began to be in need. When she was wandering and wondering what to do, an acquaintance approached her. He happened to be the wickedmost of that land. He spoke deceitfully, saying, "Beautiful girl like you should never starve. Though the famine is raging, there is money in the flesh business. Not only that, there is an endless supply of the substances that you need. Are you willing to do it?" Having sex with strangers was not something new to Rachel. Since she had no other skills or qualifications at that point in her life, she hired herself out to that man. He in turn sent her into one of his brothels. Leah, on the other hand, had a lot of time to focus on her work life. She was also regular to one of the mega churches in the city. Wholeheartedly, she invested herself in church activities. One fine day, a handsome young man named Jacob joined her congregation. He was from a well-to-do family in a distant land. He fought with his folks and moved to the city for better prospects. He looked like candy to Leah, and she fell in love with him instantly. It was love at first sight. She welcomed him and walked him to his seat. It was like walking down the aisle for her. But Jacob didn't show any interest in her. He was after the gorgeous dolls and divas of his newfound fellowship in the city. Days rolled on. Since Leah didn't face any harassment at her office, she was able to work on her career growth. She got promotion after promotion and came to an excellent position. She was good at what she was doing. Unfortunately, her heart was not in what she was doing. She found meaning and purpose in her church mandates, but couldn't find such things in her corporate mandates. She could give herself entirely to her congregation where she was not paid anything, but couldn't do the same to her organization where she was paid every month a large sum of money as a salary. She was devoted to her church ministers and despised her office superiors. She served in one place for God and served in another place for money. She was serving two masters but couldn't see that as a problem. But such a lifestyle had a massive impact on her everyday life. She often felt emptiness and restlessness and anxiousness and sinfulness within herself and started gaining weight because of that. She discussed this issue with her pastor and said she wanted to quit her profession. But her pastor was totally devastated. He rebuked her, saying, "Our Lord has blessed you with an amazing job. How can you disrespect God by throwing away His blessing like that? How many are waiting in the queue to get a career like yours? How many church ministries and charities can you support if you continue working?" Look at the life of Apostle Paul. He was a tent maker. He did a secular job to support his ministry. That's exactly what you are doing now. Therefore, please don't blow it. Not only that, as you know very well, our congregation is a congregation of professionals. You have a higher chance of getting a groom from our church. We are also praying earnestly that you get settled here. But if you leave your profession, who will respect you? Who will come forward to marry you? What will happen to your future? Therefore, don't even think about it. Leah listened to her pastor and abandoned her plan. Years went by. Leah was still not getting a marriage proposal. She spoke to her spiritual guides and friends from her supermassive church. They asked her her expectations. She replied that she didn't have many, except that the groom should be an excellent believer, well educated, tall, handsome, and very importantly, he should not be bald or black. Her friends tried their level best, but they couldn't find the guy of her desire. She expressed her frustrations wherever she went. Her mother saw that and took the matter into her hands. She also knew what was in Leah's heart because Leah used to talk a lot about Jacob. She summoned her messengers, gave instructions, and sent them to that distant land. When Jacob's family received the proposal, they were filled with happiness. Immediately, they contacted their son and said, "We have received an alliance for you. You must know her very well because you both attend the same church." Jacob was also excited. He asked them to send the photo as soon as possible. When he received Leah's picture, he got depressed. He stopped talking to his parents. Jacob's parents thought their son was praying and waiting for God's approval. A week later, they lost their patience. They contacted their son and asked him about his decision. He asked them back, "Is this girl a believer? Because as a believer, I must marry a believer." His parents were blunt this time. They replied, "All those believer girls whom you are interested in are not interested in you. They are also not from a God-fearing family. This girl is a very good child of God from your own church. She has a high-paying job and her mother can give a lot of gold. If you reject her, you will never get such a good family. Don't also forget the fact that you are not young anymore. There is also no security in whatever you are doing in the name of job. Therefore, if you don't listen to us, you will suffer greatly in the future." Jacob heard everything and didn't say anything. After a few days, the thought of staying single plagued his brain. Leah's financial stability and her family background were impressive in his eyes. Hesitantly, he gave his approval, saying, "I think God wants me to marry this girl." Leah was full of smiles on her wedding day. No one thought that she was such a happy person. Her face was full of teeth on that day. Jacob's face, on the other hand, was like the face of someone who was attending his own funeral. When he saw those beautiful bridesmaids, his agony went up. Excruciating pain filled his inner being. Did they all come to torture me? He wondered. He just wanted to die on his wedding day. But the thought that he could have sex that night encouraged him. It helped him to get through that day. Proverbs 30 verses 21 to 23 says that the earth cannot bear an unloved woman when she gets a husband. If the earth cannot bear her, how can Jacob bear her? He called his parents for aid, saying, "It's all your idea." Since his parents had nothing better to do with their lives, they came and gave their full support. Days rolled on. Since Jacob feared his society, he stayed faithful to his wife. But his heart was not after her. It lusted and wandered after other women. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, "Because the Lord has looked upon my affliction. From now my husband will love me." She conceived again and bore a son and said, "Because the Lord has heard that I am not loved, he has given me this son also." And she called his name Simeon. Then she ceased bearing children because she did family planning. She entrusted her boys to her parents-in-law and focused on her career and her congregation. Years went by. Leah purchased lands, built houses, planted vineyards, and became wealthy in the city. Since she was one of the highest contributors in the church, her pastor wanted to bring her into the leadership team. It just so happened that his youth in church started to be critical of his activities. He wanted to replace that woman with one of his loyalists. He gathered his committee members and said, "The person responsible for the youth team seems to deviate from God's teachings. She must be replaced as soon as possible." I waited and prayed in our Lord's presence for a long time. God suggested me to choose Leah. As you all know, she is a well-respected believer in our church. She is employed, married, having children, well settled, and enjoys a very high social status. Who else can lead our youth team in the right direction? Since those committee members were just the puppets of their pastor, what could they say? They all said yes to his proposal. Immediately after taking charge, Leah introduced a lot of changes. She didn't let those boys and girls to sit together. She didn't even allow them to talk to each other. She banned them from taking trips together. She introduced strict dress codes for girls. The youth participation started to diminish, but she didn't take it seriously. She said to herself that she would never compromise on spiritual matters. The dropouts thought that the church elders would intervene and do something, but none did anything. To the dismay of those dropouts, the elders started to appreciate Leah. They were immensely impressed with her actions. They always wanted to reform the youth department because they felt their boys and girls were out of control. They tried to limit their freedom, and Leah did precisely that. Regarding teaching, Leah had a single message for almost every occasion. She taught her remnant saying, "You should not be like those who left our youth fellowship. They will feel the wrath of God on the day of judgment. You should be God's good witnesses. That's exactly what I am from my childhood." There were several distractions, but I concentrated on my studies, worked hard, and came up with flying colors. Because of my academic achievements, I got a high-paying job in our city. Though I had a busy work schedule, I did not miss out on God's ministry and everyday spiritual disciplines. After settling well in my church and corporate life, I prayed for a long time and waited for the Lord to get a God-fearing husband. On this point, you must all pay attention. I kept myself pure until the day of my wedding. Like me, you should all do the same. It is vital to protect your virginity for your better half. So many men tried their level best, but I did not give in to temptation. A lot of women who were known to me did not resist such men, but I did not give up. Like me, you should maintain your purity until the day you all walk down the aisle. In short, Leah preached herself whenever and wherever she got an opportunity. In utter contrast to her teachings, her sister Rachel was living a life in that same city. She was one of the most wanted prostitutes in that land. Her brothel owner reserved her for the political and religious leaders. They were the fattened swines of the country. Though the famine was raging, it had no effect on their size. In fact, they were getting bigger and bigger by feeding on the flesh of others. Rachel suffered so much under their weight, but she endured everything to stay afloat. The days went by. Though Rachel had many abortions before, one fine day she decided to stop doing that. Her owner warned her, saying, "If you keep the baby, we cannot keep you here." Rachel was heartbroken. With tears, she raised her voice and asked, "All these years I fed your pigs. I bore them and filled your pocket. Why do you throw me away like garbage when I needed you the most?" Her owner was filled with fury and shouted, "How dare you raise your voice against me like that?" That man caught her by her hair, dragged her through the corridor, and threw her out on the street shouting, "Be gone, whore! You are not the only pretty face that we got." Rachel thought her friends would stand up for her, but none came forward. The famine was severe and they all feared being in need. That day, Rachel realized how fake her friends were. She was on her own for the first time, alone on the streets with the baby in her belly. Not before long, she was surrounded by starving, skinny street dogs. They couldn't believe their eyes. They thought that stars were shining on them. They all wanted a piece of her. Rachel didn't resist them. She allowed them, thinking that she might get something in return for her child. But no one gave her anything. Instead, she was brutally beaten, violently bitten, mercilessly violated, and thrown into the gutter. The night was not kind to her either. It was getting colder and colder, and the whole world was closing in on her. At that time, Rachel came to herself. She said, "How many of my mother's hired maids were cared for when they were pregnant? How many of them gave birth in my mother's lap? How tenderly and joyfully their babies were nourished at my home? But my baby is perishing here with hunger, and I die here in pain. I will arise and go to my mother, and I will say to her, 'Mother, I have sinned against God and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your daughter. Treat me as one of your hired maids.'" People say Buddha got his enlightenment under a Bodhi tree. Rachel got her right mind when she was alone in that gutter. Since a new life was growing inside her, she mustered her strength, rose up, and started moving toward her home. But while she was still a long way off, her mother saw her and felt compassion and ran and embraced her and kissed her. Rachel said to her, "Mother, I have sinned against God and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your daughter. Please treat me as one of your hired hands and give some food for the baby inside me." Her mother's heart melted when she heard that. She said to her maids, "Come quickly and clean my daughter," and bound up her wounds, pouring oil and wine. "Bring the best gown and put it on her, and put a ring on her hand and her nose, and golden slippers on her feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us feed her and celebrate. For this my daughter was dead and is alive again. She was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. At that time, Rachel's elder sister Leah came to visit her mother from her hectic city life. She dragged her husband and children along with her. When she drew near to the house, she heard music and dancing. She was puzzled to see a party without any intimation to her or her husband. And she called one of the maids and asked what these things meant. And that maid said to her, "Your sister has come, and your mother has killed the fattened calf because she has received her back safe and sound." Leah was furious when she heard that. She refused to go inside. But Jacob took his boys and ran inside to welcome Rachel. He heard of her beauty but never saw her in person. When the mother saw Jacob, she asked, "Where is Leah?" He replied, "I don't know. She was right behind me." The mother came out and saw Leah standing alone with a red face. She entreated her to come in, but Leah answered her mother, "Look, from my childhood I have kept all your words and I have never disobeyed your commandments. Yet you never gave me anything that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this daughter of yours came, who has devoured your gold with worthless people, you killed the fattened calf for her." And the mother said to Leah, "Daughter, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your sister was dead and is alive. She was lost and is found." Leah continued her rage. "Are you out of your mind, mother? Have you ever thought about what will happen to our family name? What will people think of you and me if you receive such a worthless woman? What will happen to our honor and to my children's future?" Her mother replied, "Your sister is in her right mind, but what happened to you? Why do you care so much about what others think? Are you not supposed to think what our Lord thinks?" Leah spilled some more of her poison. She said, "This filthy woman has destroyed our gold. She will destroy whatever we are left with." Her mother asked, "Is your sister not of more value than all these things? We received her back alive. Is there not something so amazing? Please come in and join the celebration." With real frustration, Leah shouted from the top of her lungs, "Are you not listening to a word that I am saying? She has come back now for everything that I have. She has come back now for everything that I have."